Okay, I think I'm live. This weird thing takes a while to go live, but here I am. Better change from live chat to. Oh no, live chat. That's what I want. Man, still trying to get used to this new interface. Hi, Miguelich, how you going? Made myself a pink lemonade. I got a little lime quarter in it. I'm just gonna squeeze the lime juice into it to add a little bit of zinc. Wow, it looks bloody rose-coloured. It's quite pale pink. Quite weird. Okay, that's very zesty. Blimey, that I just licked my fingers. And hello, Noog and Fox of Fate and Miss Foxification. No sugar sun-kissed. Oh, right. That's the orange soft drink. Yes, there's no sugar lemonade in this one. That's pretty good with some juice in it. I swear, it's like a pale pink in real life, and I'm looking on the screen, and it looks like an orange color, and it is not orange. My drink is not orange. Ah, nice. This foxification. If it's a liberal drink, changes its colors as soon as it gets on camera. And there is actually a cocktail called the Liberal, which I made on election night. Put a bit of bitter stuff in it, the bitter Liberal. I think I already know, even though it's only a Tuesday, and I don't always have a cocktail on a Tuesday. I'm going to have an absinthe cocktail because I got this new blue absinthe. This is made by the same people who make the red absinthe. It's just slightly higher alcohol content. I think it tastes the same. It's just a different color. But I want to give it a go a bit later. Oh, yes, that's a bit of trivia I heard, Miss Foxification, that Hitler created Fanta, or at the very least, Fanta was created by the Nazis during World War II. Not literally sure how accurate that is, but I've definitely heard that. It's very. Megaly, sugar-free from diabetes. Yes, I try and avoid drinking sugar drinks as well because I get enough sugar from other sources. Miss Fuchs, okay, yes, the Nazis invented Fanta because they couldn't get Coke. And then Coke bought Fanta. I don't know. The world is very, very strange. There are a few places in the world where Coke doesn't dominate. Scotland's one, Iron Brew. You see, no bring up Iron Brew. The orange fizzy drink from Scotland, I think, remains Scotland's most popular soft drink. And I know some countries in South America have their own local soft drink, and Coke's not such a big thing because they have their local one, which is good. There should be some variety around the world, after all. We don't want to be completely homogenous. Music creative, yes, the big question, who thought White Night in winter would be a good idea? Well, late winter, early spring. And I think, well, my initial thought was they did it because it gets dark earlier, and so they can. And I notice, for those who've never heard of White Night, it's a sort of art festival installation on the streets of Melbourne. It's been running for a few years, and it used to run on a Saturday night. I think it was like in late summer, and would run all night. And this year they've changed it up. They've put it on about 6 months later. And it's over 3 nights and only goes till 2 a.m. on the Friday and Saturday night. It doesn't go all night. So it's very different. It'd be interesting to see what it is like this year, what effect that has. If I were to guess, it's going to make it more crowded because it's not a marathon and people sort of get on in. So It'll be interesting to, yeah, my initial thought is it's going to be more crowded, and it can get super crowded. It's not a thing to go to if you're agoraphobic or just don't like crowds, because masses of people on the streets of Melbourne for White Nights. So many people. But I'll go. It'd be fun. I might live stream from White Night just from my phone, because that's fairly easy to do. I might live stream from my phone for White Night for a while, because that's right at the end of the month. So it'll be just about when my data is going to renew. So I'll know how long I can do it for. Hey, Justin, how you going? Yes, no, it is. It can be a little disturbing to see all the brands that are actually under Coke's umbrella. Coke just by saying, what Mrs. Angry did with Chuck, stuck a rag in his mouth. He was talking too much, apparently. It's actually a little absorbent cloth I use as a coaster, because I tend to put a lot of ice in my drink, so we get condensation. I'm taking it out of your mouth, Chuck. Hey, you racist scorpion. Yes, okay. Trans rights, I'm all on board with that. Yes, music app. That's exactly it. I wouldn't want to stream from my phone at the start of a month, because I'd forget myself and use all my data at the start of the month. I'm going to do it at the end of the month when there'll be leftover data, and I'll do it then. Well, yes, Fox. Mrs. Angry may have been torturing Chuck. It happened when I wasn't here, so I don't know the full story. Justin, what do I think of the idea of storing Area 51? Well, it's just a joke. Clearly, no one's going there. It's made for some funny memes, and it's all fun that everyone's gotten on board with it. So yeah, it's obviously not going to actually happen. It was just one person's idea of a joke, and it somehow got picked up. The way viral things happen, no one knows. I mean, for a bit of a comparison, just about the time that Pokemon Go was huge, so a couple of years ago, two friends of mine, one in Sydney, one in Melbourne, independently set up a thing like, hey, let's all go and do Pokemon Go as a huge group. And they set a venue for it. She knows in the background, Mrs. Angry is heating up a wheat bag in the microwave, because it's that type of night. The storm stopped just earlier tonight. There was a storm, thunder, rain, wind. Not the most severe storm I've ever seen. There's a mysterious stranger in the kitchen. But yes, the storm stopped. And Ms. Notification, you're saying stupid people might do it. Yes, but stupid people do stupid stuff every day. So we were saying, about Facebook events that lots of people sign up for. So for instance, and they both kind of went the same way. I went to the one in Melbourne my friend was running, because they put it on as Facebook events that they just expected their friends to respond to, and they went a little bit viral, and both of them had tens of thousands of people responding that they were going to go. And it even made the news, which of course made more people find the event and say they were going to go. So basically, in the lead up to the event, one in Melbourne, one in Sydney, they both had tens of thousands of people saying they were going to go. And I went to the one in Melbourne because a friend of mine was running it, and it's really funny because he got some sponsorship, because he's a bit of a hustler like that. He just showed some toy and game shops the event, and do you want some free publicity? Give me some stuff to give away, and I'll mention that came from you. And so he got some stuff to give away, and a couple of dozen people showed up, and that's out of over 10,000 people who said they were going to go. A couple of dozen showed, and that was something that was easy to get to, legal, and people were already doing it anyway. It was an actual thing you do, play Pokemon Go. So it was considerably under 1% of people who said they were going to go actually went. And I stress that was to something that was legal, easy to get to, and something people were doing anyway. The Area 51 thing, like nobody's going to go because it's hard to get to, illegal, and it's just not a thing people do. So yeah, and yes, Justin, you make a good point. There's nothing at Area 51 anyway. I fucking hate conspiracy theories, actually. Even comparatively benign ones like aliens and whatnot. I fucking hate when a show comes on the TV where they go, the mystery of Death Island. What happened? You are making this up. You are making a thing up that never happened. And I fucking hate that you're doing it and pretending it's real, like true psychic stories. There are no true psychics. They're all fucking charlatans. I get so angry. Saf had been at Aussie Rules training. Good. Hope you kicked a few for me, because I don't do stuff that involves physical activity. Although I will admit, I used to play Aussie Rules. God, I was never sporty as a kid, but my mum made all us boys play soccer. So I had to play soccer with the local soccer club for 10 years, like from under sixes to under 16s. So I played soccer for 10 years and never liked it. And then when I was in about year 11, they started up an Aussie Rules club in my town. My sister and her husband were two of the key people who started the club. And I started playing that, and I'm still no good at it, but I had more fun playing Aussie Rules than I did with any other sport I've ever indulged in. So yes, I actually recommend Aussie Rules as fun to play compared to other sports. Noog, am I keeping an eye on next UKPM? Oh, it's going to be Boris Johnson. I've been saying that for ages. Is it still him or Michael Gove? I don't know. They're all fucking horrible. So it just stopped raining in Melbourne. There's a lot of wind, thunder, a little bit of lightning, and quite a bit of rain. And it stopped not long before I came on, actually. Lasted for, the storm was like half an hour to maybe an hour. I don't know. But it stopped. And here we are. So maybe the next UKPM. I don't know. British politics just confuses the shit out of me. So hard to get a narrative because you get, I don't know, the Tories are just a fucking shit show. But apparently, most people think they'd win if there was a federal, they don't even say federal election, do they? A general election. And, I kind of hold out hope that, Jeremy Corbyn could actually be good. A populist lefty, old school lefty, could actually be good. But I can't get a read on what would actually happen in an election with him standing. I mean, because the way the voting for leader in the Labor Party worked, the rank and file members get to vote, and twice the rank and file members have really convincingly voted for Corbyn to be leader of Labor Party, which to me suggests they'd all vote for him. But then you get all these, there's lots of Labor MPs who are constantly undermining him, which, hey, something we're used to in Australia. Then you get some media saying like, Corbyn could never win. I mean, what are you basing that on? And then with the whole Brexit thing, because it's actually clear Corbyn's not a particular fan of the EU. And despite the fact the Brexit campaign was headed by a bunch of right-wing, racist, lying fuckwits, there's actually quite compelling left-wing arguments against the European Union, basically because it really only benefits the wealthy. So it's pretty clear Corbyn doesn't really like Brexit, but it's kind of sort of Labor policy to oppose Brexit, even though I don't think it's official. But I've seen media reports of, Labor MPs saying they'd resign if Corbyn pushed for another referendum, like being anti-Brexit, because their constituency voted in favour of Brexit. And then other ones saying he has to speak out against Brexit. That has to be our central platform. No Brexit, or we'll lose the election. And it's just like, okay, people just keep saying completely contradictory things. And I'm not hooked in enough in UK politics to know what the fuck is going to happen. And anyway, with the way elections have gone around the world for the last couple of years, trying to predict what will happen is a mug's game. Don't trust anyone who starts confidently predicting stuff. No, nobody knows anything. I get particularly annoyed when people justify results or explain results after the fact. And it's like, fuck you. If you didn't back that result before the vote, it's not that I'm not interested in doing a deconstruction, but I've seen way too many people in the media and on the internet for that matter, acting like they're super smart. I know why Brexit got up. I know why Scott Morrison won. I know why Donald Trump won. Like, get fucked. If you didn't call it before the election, you're full of shit. Yes, you can do a post-mortem and try and do it, but don't do it with this tone of you're so fucking smart, because you don't. You don't know why it happened. You didn't predict it. So, yeah. I mean, there are, of course, a small number of people who predict it. But I mean, this is the ridiculous thing. Like, it is incredibly obvious. Not only did Trump not expect to win the US election, he didn't want to. He clearly did not want to be president. And it's clear that not only maybe the Brexit campaigners did want it to happen, but they clearly never expected it to happen because they didn't have anything remotely approaching a plan for how to implement it. It's fucking ridiculous. It's obvious everything they said in the campaign was a lie, and they obviously didn't expect to win. They were just shit stirring and trying to increase their own brand, and it was a big fucking grift for them, and they were shocked as anyone when it got up because they clearly had no plan whatsoever. Okay, I get what you're saying. You're saying Trump's been chasing the presidency since the 90s. He's talked about it because Trump is pure ego. And Trump has never had real respect from the people he wanted respect from because he's always been a gauche, obnoxious oaf, and only other obnoxious oafs liked him. And yes, he's talked about running for president for a long time, but I defy anyone to get evidence to the contrary. His entire run was just a promotional tool. It was just getting the Trump brand out there. He was just planning to cash in on it, get his big ugly head out there, get another TV show, and make everyone else look like suckers. And I mean, he looked at his inauguration, at the election night, at his inauguration, he looked so fucking depressed. Like he so obviously didn't want it. It was, everyone's worried about succeeding. People, are worried about how they'll feel if they fail. Trump had never seriously considered how he'd feel if he won. Is that, Justin, you've heard Trump could win the election without winning the popular vote and by a bigger margin? I don't think you articulated that exactly how you wanted. You heard, look, we can hear anything about Trump. What has been clear for the electoral system in America, like George W. Bush got in, without winning the popular vote. The whole thing about, people saying, oh, Trump could do this, Trump could do that. Yeah, he could. I honestly think the most likely outcome is Trump wins the next presidential election. But all these pundits who, posit this, that, or the other, they're talking out their ass. They don't know what they're talking about. So is British voting system the same as Australia? No, it's actually quite different. And for the specifics, because I don't think it's first past the post. But it's different to Australia's. Oh no, it is. First past the post is used to elect MPs in the House of Commons. Under first past the post, the UK or local authorities invited voting areas and ballot papers are counted, and the candidate with the most votes is elected to that constituency or ward. So if lots of candidates run, the winner might have a comparatively low percentage of the vote, like much less than 50%. So what we have in Australia is a preferential voting system. Okay, first past the post. In Britain, there's 5 people running for a seat. There's a Tory, Labor, Lib Dem, Brexit Party, and Raving Loony Monster Party. Okay, so the votes are tallied. The Brexit candidate gets 5% of the vote. The Raving Loony Monster Party gets 6% of the vote. The Lib Dem gets 9% of the vote. I'm making up numbers. Let's say the Lib Dem gets 19% of the vote. Labor gets 30% of the vote. The Tory gets 40% of the vote. The Tory's elected on 40% of the vote. Now, if that same thing happened in Australia, 5 people in a seat is like Liberal, Labor, Greens, Fuckhead Party 1 and Fuckhead Party 2, and with the same things, no one's got 50%. The person with the least votes is kicked out, and then their preferences are counted. Like, okay, people who voted for them first, where did their preferences end up getting directed? And then you distribute all their preferences to the other candidates, and you go, has anyone got 50% yet? No. Okay, knock out the bottom one again, distribute their preferences again. Okay, has anyone got over 50% of the vote now? And you keep doing that until someone has got 50% of the vote. I think a preferential voting system is orders of magnitude better than first past the post. I think first past the post is shit, honestly. A few places around the world have preference. Oh, Mimsy's here. I'll move Chuck. You want to come up here? Say hello to everyone? Meow. Come up here. Up here. That's it. That's it. Come up here. Or not. What are you doing? You're acting like, come up here. Come up here. There you go. Come up and say hello to everyone. Yes, Mimsy's come to say hello. You've been outside, haven't you? You're wet. Did you go outside in the rain? You're a bit wet. Yes. Oh, no, wants more attention. Sorry. Sorry, Mimsy, for not giving you all the attention that you feel you are so richly deserved. Yes. Oh, she's just showing off to the crowds now. Yes. She knows she's the center of attention. What did you think of the trailer for the Cats movie, Mimsy? Was that cultural appropriation? Your species is not a costume? Did you not like it, or were you a fan of it? Do you want to see a movie with weird anthropomorphic cats? A bit weird. I wasn't as weirded out by it as some people were. Mrs. Angries reckons it's just what she'd expect it to be. But yes. Aha, this Fox Action, I see the video of the drug dealer crashing into a police car. Was that the van that supposedly had millions of dollars worth of meth in it? I didn't know there's a video. I saw a news story that a van which was then discovered to have millions of dollars of meth in it crashed into a cop car trying to get away. It's like, yeah, meth will make you do things like that, I guess. 200, that's right. I was going to say it was a really big number, like hundreds of millions. But, and also for those who don't know, um, uh, whenever you get those reports on the media about street value of 200 million, it's actually complete horseshit. Because what they do, when it's a big haul, it's usually someone fairly high up the chain, and they've paid, X amount of money for the droogs they have, and then they divvy it up, maybe cut it with something, and sell the blocks of it to next level dealers, and they turn a profit off that. Like they sell it for more than they paid for it. And then those next level dealers, they got their big chunk and they break it up into some dealers below them. And they charge more for that. And it keeps going down and down, getting broken into smaller and smaller bits, maybe each time being cut with something, each time the price per weight goes up till you get to the street level dealing. And that's what the cops base their numbers on. They're going, oh, okay, so this X kilos of meth would be broken down this many times, charged to this, and they go 200 million. They whenever cops do a drug bust thingy and attach, and I'm not even exaggerating, whenever they talk about the value of the drug, but street value, they're exaggerating what the person who got busted paid for them by at least a factor of 100. Now, if they're saying street value of 200 million, like if someone actually had drugs that they paid, if they're like a major importer and they paid $2 million for them, I mean, that's a fuckload of money and it's a fuckload of drugs. But it's often quite absurd. Like the cops, when they're doing their press conferences and saying some huge number for the value of the drugs they busted, it's quite often only a couple of kilos, and like they are lying so much, talking up the scale of their bust. And Plus, the cops sell most of it anyway. Oh my God, 270 kilograms. Is that what they're saying? That's a lot. If there was really 270 kilograms of meth, that is a lot. And, that would kind of explain crashing into a cop car as well. That's the sort of thing that just seems like a good idea if you've got 270 kilograms of meth in your van. Yeah, that's pretty wild stuff. Miss Fox, do you think he'd be more careful? I don't think people who have hundreds of kilograms of meth are careful about anything. That simply doesn't strike me as the actions of someone who is careful about anything. That's that is a person who, I suspect, is more than a tad reckless in basically every aspect of their life, because that is well out there. That level of importation. But they get high off their own supply. Yeah, I fear that may be the case. I mean, I've never been big in the drug world. I do remember ages ago, decades ago, being in someone's house, and they had they were selling people hash, like actual hashish, and they from my perspective, they were pretty serious here. They had a block about this big, that thick, which was so much more than I'd ever seen in my life. I'd only ever seen very small things of hash being sold, and he was cutting off bits from this big chunk. And so I said, "Yeah, wow, that's like the most hash I've ever seen." I'm not particularly experienced. And he said, "Oh, like I got off my brother, who's higher up the chain," and he said his brother had a block that was a couple of kilos, and he said, and that's the most. When his brother cut off this slab, he says, that's the most I've ever seen. And he said, "Oh yeah, my brother buys from scary fucking people. Like I won't go near the people he buys from. I just get from him. But yeah, the people he buys from, they'll straight up fucking kill you if you look at them funny." So yeah. Justin, do I think illegal drugs should be legalized? Yes. There is basically no societal benefit to making drugs illegal, because it doesn't stop their use, and it just makes criminals rich, and creates a very violent environment around the drugs, and because of the illegality, it makes it much harder for someone who wants help to get it. So, misfoxication, you think cost of health system productivity is a valid reason not to legalise? I don't believe statistics and actual reality bears that out. The simple fact is there are much higher drain on the health system than they would be if they were legalized, because it's criminal by nature, and it just makes everything about it more dangerous. It makes everything surrounding the use of drugs more dangerous. It makes it less likely for people to get help when appropriate. It makes them more likely to be exposed to dangerous situations. You just need to look at history. Prohibition doesn't work. drug use is basically not affected by prohibition. Drugs keep getting used. You know, billions of dollars are gone down the tubes in the drug trade. Prohibition doesn't work. So, yes, Justin, harm minimization is the way to go, in my effective. Well, see, miscalculation, dirty deals. This is the thing. If it was legal, you'd have a legal framework for selling it, much like marijuana is increasingly being made legal. And, that's been seen to work essentially. Hello, fridge compressor. Thank you for turning on while I'm talking. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of legalizing or decriminalizing is to get rid of gross dealers and actually have a regulated framework for the sale. Same as with alcohol, uh, and alcohol does way more damage, kills way more people, costs the health system way more than illicit drugs do. So, yeah, I'm definitely in favour of decriminalising recreational drugs. So, does Johnson like Trump? Johnson will suck up to Trump if he gets the job. Johnson is on tape disparaging Trump and talking about what a gormless idiot he is. But Johnson becomes British Prime Minister, he will suck up to Trump unconditionally. Oh no! See, yeah, misfoxication. If someone's doing like meth and shit, then yes, there's horrible toxic. But see, that's also the thing. If there were a range of decriminalised drugs available, it would be far less likely people would go for shit as nasty as meth. Safa, what do you want decriminalised? Talking about drugs. You're saying in Melbourne you couldn't score weed, but there are lots of meth. I don't know on either count. I know it makes me boring, but scoring the drugs is not something I do, so I have no idea about supply availability and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, meth is widely reported to be freely available and causing a lot of problems. Again, I'm always slightly dubious about media reporting on that sort of thing because they like sensationalizing. But yeah, there's not really anything good to say about meth, is it? Oh yes, misfoxication, crocodile. Yes, that's particularly bad. There are always people who fuck themselves up. Yes. Oh God, Safa, stop teasing. You want something naughty decriminalised in Victoria. Well, I assume it's naughty if it's criminalised. From a certain perspective, anyway. There's lots of stuff that I'm completely okay with that's, criminalised, but everything's naughty from someone's perspective. You got to find your own ground. I like when people who, sorry, just remember, I got into a huge fight and really pissed some people off who were, Dalai Lama worship. Dalai Lama, he's so great. Dalai Lama's a shithead. And he's got incredibly repressive ideas about sex and sexuality. And to the point of literally basically saying having sex during daylight with the lights on is wrong because that's perverted and whatnot. And this person who's refusing to believe, saying like, "Oh, like I believed someone's slandering him or taken out of context," blah, blah, blah. And I went, "Oh my God, you haven't actually read the Dalai Lama's books, have you?" Because it's in his books. As well as people who've just developed a concept of who the Dalai Lama is and they don't actually know anything about him. It's like he's a misogynist, a homophobe, a prude, and a bigot. And it's just like, fuck. Look, in a perfect world, nobody's addiction, foibles, or habits should negatively impact on other people. But there is also the question of at what point are you able to complain about someone else's foibles? It's like you will get a bunch of people who say gay people existing has a negative impact on them and they want to stop gay people existing. But you get people who say someone of a different ethnic group, nationality, religious orientation is an affront to them and shouldn't be allowed. And I'm not exaggerating. There's a lot of people who literally push that line. So while it would be nice if people didn't fuck up your shit with their habits, like me personally, I'm so happy smoking got banned in public places. I mean, restaurants was the first obvious one, but so glad it got banned from pubs and bars and shit. Because in my youth, when I used to go out, it was like, oh God, okay, I'm gonna go out, but I'm not gonna be able to breathe. And tomorrow I'll wake up and everything about me will stink of smoke. My hair, my skin, my clothes, my eyes will be fucked up, my lungs will be fucked up. Oh my God, I'm so glad that doesn't happen anymore. See, miscalculation, you're being reasonable and assuming other people are. Your starting point, I think, is completely reasonable. When people's own indulgences, be that smoking, drinking alcohol, doing drugs, you shouldn't fuck up other people's lives with your habits. That's perfectly reasonable. But yeah, again, trying to like legislate something like that is super difficult because where's the boundary of what's reasonable to object to and what isn't? I mean, a lot of people think the smoking ban's unreasonable. My response is fuck those people. I think smoking's fucking vile and having it forced on me is shit. Oh yeah, you've got a cousin who's recovering meth head. I have heard, and I actually know a few people who are in that boat. And yeah, the big thing is it's a very powerful psychological addiction. It's very hard not to think about it. There are a range of treatments. I mean, the majority of treatments are shit. Uh, but there are some good and effective. I think kaiju, paper and bitte. Is that asking for paper or your papers? Asking for your papers. I know bitte is please. And it looks like it's something to. So you being yes, okay. You being an East German secret police. How often do I smell a cigarette? Good question. There's always in the city. There's always someone smoking. And sometimes when you're just walking behind someone and they're smoking, and it's just at the pace, so the fucking smoke comes back in your face, and I hate that. And it's like they're walking at your speed, or just a little bit faster, or a little bit slower, and you're stuck there. and to get in front of them so the smoke doesn't trail back into your face, you have to walk way faster than you want to get past them. Fuck, it's just, and when I do see smokers, they are so often completely inconsiderate and oblivious to what fuckwits they're being. And then, you know, half the time you've got to worry about actually someone hitting you with the burning fucking ember of their cigarette because they're completely oblivious to the fact they're waving the fucking thing around. Do people still do rollies? Yeah, some people do. It's interesting. There is apparently somewhat of a trade in illegal tobacco if you know who to go to, eh? Which is a lot cheaper because they haven't paid tax on it, but it's obviously illegal as well. I don't know how big that really is. It gets in the news every now and then. But it is apparently a thing, buying, uncut tobacco leaves. Yeah, I never really know when these stories are all hype or when they're real, but it does come up in the news every now and then. Miss Fox's question, is it banned under shop front awnings? I don't think so. It's banned places that serve food undercover. So it is banned outdoors, places that serve food. Oh, yeah, that's probably another misclassification. Imported Chinese cigarettes that haven't had duty paid on. But yeah, it's illegal, obviously. Oh, I like that, Ahmed. Canadian First Nations people who made their fortune farming and manufacturing tobacco. Does that mean they have special rights with their own land that they don't pay excise, so it's cheaper? Or are they just doing it and selling it? Because I know with some treaties on their own land, it's certain laws don't apply. So have I ever smoked? No. I think I took a drag on a cigarette a couple times when I was a teenager. Don't think I inhaled, but I've never smoked, never actually smoked, not even weed. So that's why, yeah, when people saying how hard is it to score weed, I don't know. I don't smoke anything. So yeah, I have just never smoked. That's right. Country within a country. Yeah, that's essentially it. Tell you what, like I jokingly referred to this live stream as a book review live stream because I'm listening to books as I drive to work. I'm listening to audiobooks as I drive to work, and I just finished the marathon of Alan Moore's Jerusalem. It was like 70 hours. Book's like apparently 1,500 pages. And I just finished it on the weekend. Oh my God, that was such a trip. That was such a trip. Yeah, it's wild. It's all about the bloody nature of reality and time and the universe, and follows this family from a few generations who, some of them see the truth. They see the truth of existence in the afterlife, and the builders, who are basically angels, but they're the ones who control what happens with people's lives. And when you die, you become multi-dimensional. You can move through time the way you move through physical space when you're alive. And oh my God, the section that was in the afterlife was so fucking weird, and it went on for so long, and it was so trippy. These little kid ghosts going off exploring and having adventures, and coming into contact with the builders, the angels who make things happen. And Asmodeus, one of the barons of hell, holy crap, it was so fucking weird. Yes, Koji, that's a good summary of Alan Moore, professional wizard, hater of ducks. Yeah, Alan Moore was a very pragmatic guy, but years ago he said he was going to explore the realms of magic just to piss people off, I think. And he seems from the book to have fallen in with the Discordians, because a bunch of real people are mentioned in the book, real politicians and real public figures. And for those who remember their 90s dance music, the KLF make an appearance in the book. The KLF, who had a string of top 40 dance hits, and they made so much money and they were so weirded out by it, they actually had a ceremony where they burned £1 million. Yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing they did. They burned £1 million because money weirded them out. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Miss Foxation. Have I seen a movie called The Discovery? 2 years after the afterlife is scientifically proven, a man attempts to help a young woman break away from her dark past. Ooh, that's an interesting one. I see. So, okay, Kaiju, you're getting angry at the KLF for burning £1 million, and I understand that. You're saying, yeah, they're a bunch of fuck nuggets. But as referenced in the book, they were rock stars. If they'd put the £1 million up their nose, like if they'd just done drugs, that would have barely raised an eyebrow. And just everything else, if they'd spent it on expensive cars or whatnot, they wouldn't have had anywhere near the level of opprobrium that burning it did. But what's the difference? How is see, okay, you're saying money wasted could have been charity. Yes, and it could have been. But every day, trillions of dollars is siphoned off by rich people and not given to charities. I'm not saying you're wrong. Obviously, you're right. They could have given it to charities. And you could say that is objectively a better use of £1 million than burning it. But as I understand it, and I'm not saying I'm on their side, but as I understand it, what they were doing is basically saying money's not real. This system that gave us this excess of money is fucked. And we're essentially going to prove money has no value and money has no power over us. But if there was any inherent value in money, burning it wouldn't be relevant. If you could take £1 million in cash out of the bank and it's all transacted and they go, yes, all this money is a promise of value. And so if you burned it, that shouldn't matter because all it was a promise of value. And it's like, okay, the KLF got this £1 million by having a bunch of top 10 singles, and the system declared because they had these hit records, they deserved to have this £1 million. And so they went and got this physical money and burnt it, and it's meaningless. There's no intrinsic value in that money. Logically, they should have been able to go back to the bank and say, give us £1 million again, because that's just gone. No one else has got it. We didn't spend it on money. The value was not transferred. The value was not transacted. The money, we didn't gain from it. It's just gone, and all it ever was a promise. So the promise should still be solid. And of course it wasn't. And it was just Discordians are into absurdist stuff. So that's what they do. Another weird thing about the KLF, if you were old enough and have the memory like me, or if you've just, I don't know, found them on YouTube, go and look at their video clips again. Like there's one where they've got a submarine in a closed set, in an indoor set. They tried to blow as much money as possible with these incredibly over-the-top, expensive video clips. They basically didn't want to make money, and they just kept trying to spend it all. See, Kaiju, your position is completely legitimate. But here's the big thing. Are you as angry at the rock stars who casually fritter away $1 million on expensive cars, expensive houses, expensive clothes, expensive holidays? That ain't going to the homeless either. Well, yeah, you say yes, but you're not really, are you? Be honest. You are more angry at the idea of them burning the money than them spending the money. In the abstract, you're angry at an unjust system, as am I. But be honest, them burning £1 million upsets you more than them spending £1 million. And I think that's completely legitimate. I think that is absolutely legitimate. But Ahmed, I agree completely. Billionaires don't spend; they hoard their money. It should be taken from them because they stole it. They stole it from the labour of others. You do not get that absurd amount of capital without fucking people over. And I will be shamelessly diehard old school lefty. There isn't a person on the planet who's a billionaire who isn't fucking scum, who hasn't got that massive wealth through incredibly brutal exploitation. And they honestly should face consequences for that exploitation. And anyone who doesn't think that is either fooling themselves or is just a nasty piece of shit. And either way, that's the thing. But there is no question in my mind that these people who are hoarding wealth and exploiting millions of people to get, it's not just that they're hoarding. That's bad enough. It's bad that they're hoarding. But they're hoarding what they gained by cruelly and viciously exploiting millions of dollars. And I mean, killing people. There's no one who is a billionaire who isn't personally directly responsible for the death of people who labored to make them. That is an unavoidable truth. And again, anyone who says otherwise is either fucking fooling themselves or is an evil piece of shit. It's anyone who has massive amounts of wealth, anyone who has massive amounts of wealth only has it because of just criminal levels of exploitation. And they've killed people to amass that wealth. It's that simple. Now, mind you, because of the evils of late stage capitalism, just you and me just buying shit in the shops, you know, we essentially have slaves that we don't know about. Our life as it is exists because people are in conditions that could only reasonably be called slavery. And we don't really have a choice. You cannot, in practical terms, get away from that. Oh yeah, Safa, the fucking dead shit celebrity chef who stole $8 million from his workers and he's playing the fucking victim. And again, that's another thing. Wage theft needs to be a criminal offence. We've got this endemic problem in Australia with so many employers stealing wages from their staff. And this is like one business stole nigh on $8 million from its employees, spread across all industries. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being stolen from employees. It needs to be a criminal offence. Like, it's only a civil offence now, and you have to pay a fine if you get caught. No, it needs to be a criminal offence with jail time, and it needs to be called what it is: wage theft. None of these pieces of shit do it by accident. It's all done deliberately, repeatedly, according to a plan, and for the very specific purpose of enriching the person at the top of the chain. This bullshit that it could happen accidentally is fucked. Oops. Okay, so I finished my pink lemonade. So I think I'm going to make a cocktail. Halfway. Time to make a cocktail. Because that's the sort of bourgeoisie I am. I have enough money from my job to buy lots of booze. That's a lot. I should have kept track. I wish I'd kept track of how, over the last couple of years, I gradually built this up. Because unless you're filthy, stinking rich, it takes a long time to build up that much, because that's really quite expensive. But I built it up over a number of years, so I didn't notice it as much. Fox, yeah, no, I think guillotines are the future. Or RC, going old school as well, with gulags for the rich exploiters. Yep. No, I'm pretty much okay with that as well. Okay, this is the whole thing. I just want to do something with my blue absinthe. Everyone, I put a picture on Facebook of my blue absinthe because it's such a nice color. Everyone seemed to like it. Ahmed, the Pratt family seemed like nice people for Billionaires. I don't know who they are. The name sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't know who they are. Miss Fox question, are the people you know billionaires, though? There's wealthy. Okay. The Pratt family are Melbourne billionaires, are they? And how did they make the money is the question. Richard Pratt, Australian businessman, chairman, privately owned. Oh, Vizzy owns the paper company. Now, there is no question that, okay, the Vizzy company would have indulged in business practices that killed people. There is no question whatsoever. The individual people might have had really nice traits and all these sorts of things, but there is no question whatsoever the Vizzy company would have had business practices that killed people. No doubt at all. That's right, RC. He got done for market rigging. Yes, I do remember that exactly. Yeah, see, well, Miss Foxification, I was limiting my ire to the billionaires. But yeah, that's right. Vizzy was cardboard and packaging and stuff like that. Their manufacturing processes and where they would have got their resources, and where there is no question that the Vizzy company would have had business practices that killed people. Ooh, Kaiju, where the dolphins and whales, microcent tracks. Read a fascinating thing about that's my other book report I want to do, but I'm going to make a cocktail first. And I looked up a couple of absinthe cocktails, and I'm going to make a variation on the ones I saw, which I'm going to call a sour blue fair, a fluffy. No, well, I'm going to call it a sour blue fluffy fairy. It's basically like a whiskey sour, but with absinthe. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to experiment. I've got, where's my blue absinthe? No, that's not it. Where did I put it? Look how nice the colour is. Isn't that a nice colour? It's an absolutely fantastic colour. But it's probably going to go really cloudy in the drink because absinthe does that. It's called lucian. I'm going to do a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And what do I want? Feta Franca? No, I'm going to do customise. So this, I looked at a few recipes and I'm coming up with my own variation. Lemon juice. Where's my sweetener? There it is. And egg white. I've got egg white in the fridge. My protein shake. Oh, and I'll get my cocktail shaker. And my tiki mug. Okay. Just about ready to go. Oh, I just need to put some ice in my tiki mug. Big old ice cube. Start to cool the glass down. Okay, so we're already big old ice cube. Ice flake went in there. All right, put this back. Okay, so. Well, I need my jigger. Where's that? Here. Okay. So. All righty. Holy cow. Sorry, I see you're looking up the Visi cartel case. They're saying they cheated customs and companies out of approximately 700 million. So they are exploitative. There you go. But I also bet they've killed people in their wealth building. No question at all, actually. Anyone who's in large-scale manufacturing kills people. That's just the way it goes. Okay, so the ingredients that I have decided, because I've never made this before, just there you go. Ooh, it's a little blue tip on there. Okay, so I'm going to put a lot of absinthe cocktails sort of go easy on it. It's like, no, fuck it, man. We're doing an absinthe cocktail. Whole shot of absinthe. I'll do half shots of the other things. Another sweet one, because one of the recipes I saw said to do it with curacao, which is an orange liqueur, and Cointreau is an orange liqueur. Just a bit more upmarket. I'm just saying, Cointreau is a bit more upmarket than curacao, triple sec, and I'm a bit more upmarket. And it had a bitter Italian thing. They were saying Amaro, but I'm going to make this is bitter Punta Mez, which I just got recently. A little bit because it's quite strong, the flavour in it, not the alcohol content, just the flavour, just a little bit of Punta Mez. And right, so that's all the alcohol. Oh no, you're saying it's official Boris one. He was always going to win. I've been saying for months next British PM was going to be Boris Johnson. Just make sure. Okay, sugar syrup. Agave, but it's still sugar syrup. Yes, Miss Johnson. I like what you're saying about his butters. He basically does look like Butters, but you know, less lovable than Butters, really. All right, egg white. Because this makes it fluffy. Although I've tried to make fluffy drinks with egg white with absinthe before, and absinthe has somewhat of a tendency to kill the fluffiness. And some lemon juice to cut a little bit. There you go. All right. So this is an experiment. I've never made this, and I'm not really following the recipes I saw. So it's going to really give it a good shake because we really want it to froth up. And this is, again, I think I'll let this thing on. This is called a dry shake. If you do it without ice, it's called a dry shake. You often shake with ice to chill the drink. But if you're doing it with egg white to make it foamy, it foams up better. Oh, it's a bit foamy. foams up better if you do a dry shake. It will foam up less if it's got ice in there. And then some people do a second shake after the dry shake, and that's a wet shake. But I'm not bothering with a wet shake because I've got a big block of ice in here. That's not. Whoa! What a color! What a color! This was hoping for. This would make a good color. See what it looks like on there. Yeah, it looks a bit greener to me. It's a bit turquoise to me. It looks very blue on the screen there. Oh wow! So Boris Johnson smashed Jeremy Hunt, 92,000 to 46,000. Smashed him. Ah, that's a good plan, RC. Would John Curtin memorial cocktail. He was Labor Prime Minister in World War II, protected Australia from invasion by the Japanese when Boris Johnson didn't want our troops to come back here. Liked to drink, did he? I think about it. I do a bit of research on John Curtin to decide what sort of drink he should have. Ah, that's pretty good, actually. Oh, yeah, it's not bad at all. So, did the CIA ever coup a Liberal Australian government? The CIA would try to undermine any government in any country that threatened what they saw as American interests. And Gough Whitlam was that. And so, yes, the CIA did what they could to get rid of him. No one since Gough Whitlam has done anything to upset the CIA, basically. So, yeah. You did the Michael Scott drink because Johnny Walker's Splendor. I found a YouTube channel. Well, there's lots of YouTube channels about drinks, but I found one that was new to me the other day is called How to Drink. And they did a Michael Scott from The Office drink, the one he called One of Everything. And yeah, he uses Splendor as the sweetener. I use syrup. A lot of cocktails have a sweetener in them, whether it's just sugar or sugar syrup, which is something you can make at home. So you make it's like you boil water and make it like 50% water, 50% sugar, and boil it for a while till it's thoroughly mixed in, and you get very syrupy syrup. But you can also get simple syrup from bigger bottle shops, cocktail specialists. There's another syrup sweetener called Orgeat, Orgeat, O-R-G-E-A-T. And okay, its base is like almonds usually. Usually, Orgeat is often based in almonds. This one I got from Costco. This is intended for cooking. You do 1-to-1 with sugar. This is agave, so it comes from cactuses. So it's the same base as tequila and mezcal, but it's not alcoholic. Tastes like golden syrup, if you know what that is like. And some people would say that's got too much flavor. A lot of people like a plain sugar syrup because it doesn't have that much flavor. It's just a sweetener. Whereas agave and Orgeat have more flavor in them. Some people prefer a more neutral sweetener, but okay, Justin, I will educate a little. You are categorically, emphatically 100% wrong. You're saying Australia is impossible to invade. The Japanese had no intention of invading here. Their plan was a war of attrition. No, that is absolutely categorically wrong. They had an explicit economic plan for how they were going to run the South Pacific, and Australia was part of that. And I've forgotten the exact name of it. It was the Southern Prosperity Zone or something like that. But they were indeed moving to invade Australia. They invaded all of Southeast Asia. That's it. Thank you, Aussie. The Asian prosperity sphere. They started with China, and then they moved all through Southeast Asia, sweeping all before them, and they got as close to Australia as Papua New Guinea, and they were stopped famously on the Kokoda Trail. But they absolutely planned to invade Australia. They had not only a military plan to do it, but they had an economic and political plan for controlling Australia, because they knew how rich in resources Australia was. So I don't want to be too harsh on you, Justin, but you were in fact categorically wrong. The Japanese were going to invade Australia, and they had a plan. Was PNG part of Queensland? Safa, I don't think so. The British may have technically controlled PNG back then. I don't think it was part of Queensland, but I wouldn't swear on a stack of Bibles, as the saying goes, because I'm not really an expert in that. But that isn't something I've heard. So I don't think PNG was administered by Australia. I think it was administered by. Look, I could be wrong. I mean, I could do a quick search and see what comes up. Was PNG part of Queensland? Territory of Papua. What's the relationship? Was a former dependent territory of Australia. Okay, so it was administered by Australia. They're both part of the Commonwealth. There's no history. I'm looking up the Wikipedia page, and there's no issue saying New Guinea came under Australian administration in 1902 following annexation by the United Kingdom. 1920, Australia was given a League of Nations mandate to rule German New Guinea. In 1945, Papua and New Guinea were combined into an administrative union and was ruled by Australia until independence in 1975. There you go. It was administered by Australia. And then West Papua got invaded by Indonesia, scumbags. Zafa, that's a reasonable approximation. Japan could have seen Australia as being farmland for them, like the Nazis saw Ukraine. That's reasonable. But Japan has like no natural resources compared to other places. That's why they invaded China. They continued their expansion through Asia, but they knew how resource rich Australia was, and it would be incredibly valuable to them. And it's also because they're geographically so far away from the rest of the world, they thought they'd get away with it. They underestimated the degree to which the US decided they wanted to have control economically of the Pacific region. So, did anyone expect Japan to invade? Well, they were moving that way, certainly. I'm not sure what you mean by expect. Yeah, there's like a one-line thing on the Wikipedia page. Japan never actually planned to invade Australia. That's I don't think that's plausible. Yeah, no, you're wrong. You're absolutely, again, I'm just saying, you're absolutely categorically wrong. Uh, Japan absolutely intended to invade Australia, and one line in a Wikipedia article doesn't count for shit. Even in that same Wikipedia article, it went on to talk about they calculated how many divisions they'd need to control territory in Australia. Uh, yeah, no, it's. Do you think they were going to stop? This is a weird thing. They had invaded all of Southeast Asia and going to invade Australia. Um, I'm sorry, but it's blatantly fucking ridiculous to say they weren't. Were they just going to stop? Is that the theory? They go all through Southeast Asia and sending their troops directly towards Australia, but then they were going to stop. It just, yeah, no. It's just it doesn't make any sense at all to say they weren't going to. Look, they got the whole thing saying that the air raids weren't. You can say as much as you like that the air raids weren't about invasion, and I would agree. You would need to explain to me what the Japanese army was doing, sweeping through Southeast Asia towards Australia. Are you literally just saying thing? And they're saying that the army and navy who disagreed decided they were going to um, isolate Australia. I'm sorry, I'm just reading things. Saying that after initial plans to invade Australia, because the army said it would be too difficult, the navy apparently thought they could do it. The navy said it only needed 3 divisions, and the army, who were probably more accurate, said it would need at least 10 divisions. So the army was saying it wasn't practical. The navy was saying it was. And they're saying towards the end, the intention was just to isolate Australia. It's, yeah, it doesn't really hold up when, I mean, are you literally saying that they were just going to stop? That the intention was to control Australia and cut it off from Britain. I mean, okay, you can start to argue that they, yeah, no, I'm having so much trouble with this. You know, their intention was to annex Australia. How much practical difference is annexing and controlling Australia? So I just feel like you're getting into semantics if you're saying they weren't going to send a land invasion force in, but they were going to completely cut Australia off and control Australia. Uh, it seems like the main division between the plan was the Navy, who said, this is easy, we can do it, and the Army, who said, this is super, super, super hard, and we can't do it. I don't know, the truth might have been in the middle. But again, the idea that this invading army that swept through China, all of Southeast Asia, and PNG was just going to voluntarily stop? I mean, in practical terms, with the landmass of Australia, the invading Japanese. See, and I think this also gets down to semantics about what invasion means as well. Could a Japanese army and populace have occupied all of Australia? Probably not. But I mean, honestly, okay. And from my point of view, where I'm saying invasion was the advancing Imperial Japanese army, which had swept all through Southeast Asia. Uh, you seriously think they weren't going to hit continental Australia, particularly just for resources? Like, you know, even if it was just like Queensland or North Queensland, you honestly think they were just going to stop? They weren't going to. And again, it also comes back to the central thing was, oh, we'll annex Australia and they will, you know, bow to our grand economic plan or else. And it's like, that was never going to happen. I just feel like this argument is semantic and pointless, because what's the difference between an actual full-scale occupation of the entire country and annexing and controlling the country? What's the fucking... Well, there's an obvious physical difference, and I will grant that. But in practical terms, the Japanese plan was to control Australia, and they would have landed troops here. Justin, the issue of sending an army through a giant desert. Queensland's not a desert. The coast, particularly the tropical and coastal areas of Queensland, are not a desert. Yes, and anyone who tried to march through the desert, why would you go through the desert? No one's there. That's not a thing you want to occupy. That's not where the resources are. Again, the idea that the Japanese army would not have invaded Australia, as in would not have landed troops in Australia, is fucking ridiculous. Yes, you can say that. I would tend to side with the voices in the Japanese army who said we can't take the country of, we cannot occupy the country of Australia. You know, like, it's logistically too difficult. I tend to think logic is on their side. But to say they would not have landed troops in Queensland as part of their operation, that's just fucking ridiculous. And yeah, I just think it's getting into a semantic argument at that point, when Japan's plan was clearly to control Australia, cut Australia off from its allies, and control Australia economically, make Australia under the Japanese political system. That was obviously the plan. And I think if you're going to go to semantics and say invasion means coming in and taking over the whole country, yeah, no, I just don't think that's a valid argument. Like, it's, again, once you get into arguing semantics, you're just bashing your head against a wall, essentially. My point is, unless stopped by force, the Japanese Imperial Army were not going to simply stop without landing troops in Australia. They would have landed troops in Queensland. It's quite absurd. The major part of their operations may have involved trying to cut off links with our allies in Europe and America. I could see that being the major part of their operations. But when the practical plan was to control Australia, and they would have landed troops in Australia, to say that isn't invasion is an incredibly pointless semantic argument in my book. Unless, look, if someone said that they thought the Japanese army thought they could take over all of Australia, clearly they would be wrong, because it appears that the Japanese army argued that wasn't possible. The logistics of that were just too difficult. And you can see that, but yeah, no, there, there would have been troops land in Australia. So for the Darwin bombings were much earlier. The whole thing with the Japanese invasion of PNG and stopping them on the Kokoda Trail was in the late stage of the war. Then the US came back and started pushing them back, and then gradually the pushback went all the way through till they'd actually pushed all the way to Japan itself. They were invading some of the different islands that were under Japanese control, and the final plan was potentially to invade the main islands of Japan, which would have resulted in just horrific losses of life. And that's when the Americans went, you know what we should do? We should test this atomic bomb that we've got. And yes, we all know what happened there. The interesting thing about the Darwin bombings was that there was almost blanket censorship on that. People in the southern states had no idea that there were bombings on Darwin, people killed by bombings in Darwin. And then when the midget subs got into Sydney Harbour and blew up some American troop ships over there, that put the wind up people, I tell you what. It made everyone feel very, understandably, made people feel very insecure and scared. But you definitely make the argument that a lot of the operations of the Japanese against Australia were intended more to be psychological than to be winning military tactics. That the idea was they wanted Australians to think they had to submit to the will of Japan, or they would be overwhelmed. So I think it is a very fair point to make that the majority of Japanese actions were psychological, as opposed to, precursors to full-scale invasion. But yeah, as I said, the flip side of that is the suggestion that the advancing Japanese Imperial Army, if they hadn't been stopped in PNG, would have voluntarily stopped, and they would not have landed troops in Queensland or Darwin or whatever to control ports and get some resources and whatnot. Yeah, that doesn't hold up. Good point. Yes, the atomic bombs used on Japan are tiny compared to modern ones. Yes, it's actually quite terrifying. I mean, we actually have conventional as opposed to conventional as in non-nuclear munitions that can be almost as devastating as nuclear weapons. What they call them, the fuel air bombs, the ones that it's a silly name the Americans gave them, the mother of all bombs, Moab. Here's a fun thing with acronyms. Who's heard the term backronym? I love that term. It's when it's basically someone invents an urban legend, and it usually catches on. Um, uh, Someone decides a word is an acronym, and they make up an acronym that sounds plausible, and it gets circulated, and people go, "Oh, that's where it comes from. TAG stands for touch and go." No, it doesn't. Someone just made that up. Um, and of course, the military, and particularly armaments people, love coming up with acronyms, and they labour for quite some time to come up with evocative acronyms. And that American weapon, the Moab, I honestly think they came up with mother of all bombs first. The military, the US military say the real acronym is Massive Ordnance Airburst. I honestly believe they came up with modern mother of all bombs first. Yes, that's what they call it in English, fuel air explosives. How they basically work is uh, dispersing incredibly volatile fuel, and they essentially aerosolize it and then detonate. And that makes the fact that it's been aerosolized makes the detonation that much. In fact, you see it, and it looks. I've seen footage of like video of detonations of these fuel air explosives. They look like nuclear explosions. Just the force of the thing actually makes a mushroom cloud. Um, they're quite terrifying, basically. And because they burn at extremely high temperatures, like nukes do, they fucking eradicate everything. Yes, that's a good example. Musical Aviator, Shield, the fictional Marvel spy agency, they labored really hard to come up with an acronym that was Shield. One of my favorites, the original digital scanner technology. Um, uh, Even before scanners were very widespread. Uh, when scanners were still quite expensive. The software that ran them was known as Twain. The person who coded it just called it Twain. Twain means two, and because you were creating two of something, and they just called it Twain, and they would capitalize it. And then people said to the guy who did the code, "Oh, because it's capitals, that an acronym. What's it an acronym for?" And he thought about it for a while and came up with technology without an interesting name. But it was never an acronym. He just went Twain as in making two. But then people decided, because all the other things in coding were acronyms, Twain must be an acronym as well. And so he came up with technology without an interesting name. Safa, could a nuke reach Australia? Depends where it's launched from. Considering they're all fucking going around on submarines, definitely. I'm also, I feel sure Russia developed ones that could reach Australia for two reasons. One, we had quite important American communications centres in Australia, Pine Gap and whatnot, that were very important to America, and the Russians would have wanted to take them out. And second, they, as a precaution, would have taken out our major ports, because American warships would have wanted to use our ports. So basically, all the capital cities would have got nuked, and the American communications facilities in places like Pine Gap would have got nuked. So I was at Missile Excavation. They had the RS-28 Sarmat, and basically I feel quite sure the Russians had land-based nukes that could have reached Australia, because it would have been extremely important tactically for them to be able to do that. But even land-based ones is like fucking. That's not even the real problem. If a sub, which could evade detection and end up just off your fucking coast, you know. Then they could hit you with short-range missiles. Oh, there's a fun one, Miss Foxcation. China has missiles that can go 12,900 kilometers. Oh my God, I just had a flashback. What was his name? Herman Cain. Who remembers Herman Cain? Fancied himself as a potential US president for the Republican Party. I think he's running when John McCain ran, and John McCain actually got the nomination. And Herman Cain, John McCain, Herman Cain, he was a fucking Fruit Loop. And he eventually dipped out because word got out he'd had an extramarital affair, and he dipped out to avoid drama on that. But my favorite reaction to that was from The Onion, my favorite satire website, because in one of the various dumb shit things he said, he was saying like Obama was too soft on foreign policy. If he doesn't get tougher on China, China will end up with nuclear weapons. And the journalist just stared at him dumbstruck and went, China has nuclear weapons, have had for some considerable time. And that, and so like he thinks he's fit to be president and didn't know China was a nuclear power. Like, what the fuck? And yeah, my favorite satire site, The Onion, ran a story when he quit because of the extramarital affair. The headline on their story was, "Man who didn't know China had nuclear weapons leaves presidential race because of extramarital affair." It was like, as the obvious point, the extramarital affair is nothing. The fact that this guy knew nothing about the goddamn world, that's what should have disqualified him. But, then we ended up with Trump, and Trump makes Herman Cain look like a mental giant and completely ethical in comparison. But this is the world we live in now. Nothing matters. Nothing counts. Powerful people are never held accountable. Shitheads in the media aren't held accountable for lies. That really bugs me. Maybe that makes me naive. Maybe that makes me really naive, and that I think shitheads in the media and politicians should be held accountable when they lie and when they say something unimaginably stupid. There should just be a blanket. Okay, so you now have no credibility. No one talks to you ever. No one grants you any credibility because you're too fucking stupid, or you just lie. You lie all the time. All your arguments are in bad faith, so no one listens to you. You don't get a platform ever again. We punish you because you are a garbage person. But that doesn't happen. Politicians just lie and say stupid shit, and they're never held accountable. Media people lie and say stupid shit, and they're never held accountable. And it's just like, well, fuck all of you, honestly. Justin, you think we should have nukes because we have resources to build our. Well, see, the thing is, although we take it for granted that there are all these nuclear weapons, because particularly the US and Russia built so many of them, and then China, and then India, and I think Pakistan has nukes too. There's a whole bunch of people who have nukes. It's actually quite difficult to build them because, it's one thing to have the fuel that makes nukes go boom boom, but then to actually refine it and create the housing that will make it detonate as a bomb is actually quite difficult. But that's also only half the equation. The other half is a reliable missile, an ICBM, that can fire with a nuclear warhead and accurately hit a target. And it's actually quite difficult to do that effectively. Yeah. Also, I don't think it's a good idea. That is a good point, Miss Foxification. We could just buy them from Russia. Yeah, there are all these international limitations on arms deals and whatnot, but you can't help thinking it would be relatively easy to buy nukes from Russia because they had so many of them. And with the fall of the Soviet Union, and it just became the kleptocracy of Russia. You can't help thinking that they didn't really keep the nukes under particularly effective lock and key. Can't help thinking it wouldn't be that difficult to buy them. But I don't know. We live in a fucked up world. Who can tell? Who can tell what's really happening? Yeah, it's God. See, I'm old enough that I grew up, in the 80s. We expected to fucking die. We expected there to be a nuclear war and we'd all fucking die. And that didn't happen. But the threat hasn't actually gone away. There are all sorts of awful risks in the world at the moment. We kind of forget about Russia and its capabilities. But anything could happen there. People are worried about Iran. People are worried about, North Korea. Not completely without reason. But it's just like, fuck. Anything. You got nuclear India and Pakistan are at each other's throats occasionally. And I mean, I think it was about 2 years ago, tensions escalated to the point where it's like, oh God, are they actually going to go off there? And then just last year, there was some exchange of fire. I think an Indian fighter jet got shot down by Pakistan and the pilot was captured and tensions went up. Although that didn't feel as bad as the one a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, fucking looked like it was going to go off. And I couldn't help thinking, because I work in IT, and so much of the world's IT is sublet to India and to a lesser extent Pakistan and Bangladesh. And so fucking nukes started flying, or even a non-nuclear but large-scale military conflict between the two happened. Besides that just being objectively awful and costing the lives of so many people, it would fuck up the economies of the rest of the world, because so much of Western economies has been subcontracted out to India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. It's ridiculous. So if they were suddenly fucked up because of a military conflict, nuclear or non-nuclear, the cascading damage to the world economy would be huge. Honestly, still secondary to the loss of life in those rather populous nations of India and Pakistan. But we're thinking about. God, I just had a flash to a comic I read a couple of years ago. I've still got it on my shelf somewhere, by one of my favorite comic writers, Warren Ellis. It's called Super God. He just tried to play with the idea of entities with superhero powers. And he's just basically saying, like, get real, it would be so fucked if there were metahumans, if there's anyone with superpowers, it would be so fucked. And in this fictional world, it was like an arms race between different countries all developing their own superhumans. And it was a two-pronged thing. One was simply the difficulty of developing your own superhuman. And then the second thing was the difficulty of keeping them in check once they realized they were, compared to mere humans, basically omnipotent. And yeah, I mean, it all fucking goes south and humanity's doomed. But one of the big ones, India develops, is one of the countries that develops their own superhuman, and they physically model it on Krishna, and it's like blue skin, and they've encoded its brain, and its central directive is to protect India and make everything better in India. And it thinks it through, and its first concept is one of the biggest problems facing the country is overpopulation. So one of the first things it does is proceed to kill about 3/4 of the population and start building from there. And it's just like, and different countries have different superhumans, and they're all fucked in different ways. And the practical upshot is humans are all going to die out because the superhumans are changing the world so much humans can't survive. But Warren Ellis is a weird guy. Warren Ellis is a very weird guy. He's a very good writer, but a very weird guy. And he writes some very weird stuff. And Super God was very weird. Sorry, Saf, as you say, how about the bigots saying, Australia's full, fuck off, we're full, when Australia is like literally 99% empty. We could probably do with less concentration in our urban areas and more population moving out to rural areas. But there's, oh, excuse me, I survived to the end without yawning. I survived to the end before I started yawning. There's a whole bunch of reasons not that many people don't want to go out to rural areas. I certainly don't. There's foxification. There's a Russian YouTuber called Ushanka Show. Talks about stuff here. I think I mentioned it in another live stream. There's a guy I used to work with who was Russian, and he was living there in the Soviet era, and I caught up with him for the first time in ages recently, and I was talking about the Chernobyl TV show. I'm sure I had this conversation where he said, "How real did that feel to you?" And he thought it was mostly real. He was living in Minsk when the Chernobyl accident happened. Um, um, Still, my favorite thing about the Chernobyl show is how they captured that fuckery of the party, and how the truth was secondary to preserving the power of the party, and that was almost the cause of a major. I mean, there was already a disaster, but it could have been so much worse. Oh gosh, that's an interesting one. Misfoxification. Yeah, what's his name again? The Ushanka show says he's talking about Chernobyl. Whenever the radio just started playing classical music with nobody talking, and then something's happening, and no one's allowed to talk about it, and so they don't trust people to talk, so they just play classical music. Good Lord. Ooh, Safa, that's a big question, and I honestly don't think I'm in a position to answer it, but it's a good question. Who had the worst system, USSR or China? I mean, my impulse is to say USSR, not least because it ultimately failed. But I'm sure people who know more about what's happening and did happen in China could elucidate reasons why they believe China's worse than USSR. That is a big question and a very good one. I also want to throw out, because of course both USSR and China had massive famines because of the system that's in place. And there's two schools of thought. One is just because of the inefficiencies of the system, and the people in power didn't care. that their shitty system was killing millions of people with famine. And there's another school of thought that says the famines were deliberate. The famines were set up deliberately to kill millions of people. And I don't know which is more accurate. I don't know enough about history to know which is more accurate. But it gets hilarious when people say, and therefore that's proof communism is bad because of the famines that killed all these people. And you go, hilarious. Let's talk about what the British did in Ireland. Let's talk about what the British did in India. Let's talk about what the British did in various African countries and what the French did in African countries and the Belgians did in African countries. It's just like people rightly point out the millions who died under Soviet system and under the China system, whether that was deliberate or just because of inefficiencies and dysfunction in the system. But fucking genocides perpetrated by the British, the French, the Belgians, the Americans against Native American, the white colonists against Native Americans. It's just like, this is blinker to go, look, no, here's evidence. Communism had famines and had genocides. Therefore, that proves communism's bad and capitalism in the West is great. And it's right there. Deliberate genocides and famines caused by the British, by the French, by the Belgians, by white Americans. It's just like, what the fuck? Well, see, that's an interesting point, Justin. You say China's worse because it still exists and still has surveillance, still persecutes people. Okay, this is also comes down to what's your definition of best and worst. Because I kind of glibly said some people might say China's better because it survived. USSR collapsed because it was worse. But yeah, you could easily make a case that historically China is worse because it's still going and still has all the negative things it does with the persecution of anyone who doesn't like the party and whatnot. But I will do one of those rare things where I admit to not knowing enough about a topic to make a conclusive statement. I think I can acquiesce that they're both nightmare scenarios that, hey, look, maybe the people who started them had good intentions. And yeah, maybe the system that they replaced was a nightmare in and of itself, Russia under the Tsar was a nightmare of exploitation and deprivation. Imperial China, you could argue, masses, suffering deprivation and whatnot. I'm sure that's what the founders of the communist states would tell you, and maybe historians would back them up. Again, my history is not that good to be able to make definitive statement over that. Oh God, suffer Russia under Putin. Not a fan of Russia under Putin. Yeah, no, that's some bad shit right there. But yeah, not a fan of America under Trump. Not gonna. There was Britain under Johnson sounds terrible, and Australia under Morrison is shaping up to be ugly as fuck as well. So, hey, you know what? Shit is happening. I've seen Putin ban hip hop. The hip hop artists doing diss tracks on Putin. Yeah, I know he's banned homosexuality as well. And very dangerous place to be, Russia, if you're gay, an ethnic minority, an opponent of Putin, daring to speak out against Putin, yeah, or a journalist. Very dangerous to be a journalist in Russia. All bad. At least New Zealand has Jacinda. She does seem kind of nice, but it's dangerous to idolize politicians. I don't have any particular dirt on Jacinda Ardern. I'm just wary. As soon as there's a cult of personality around a politician, you sort of all the warning lights go off. It's like careful, careful. This person's a politician. It's almost inevitable they're going to do something really fucked. It's like Justin Trudeau in Canada could run off a list fucking mile long of shit he's done. Everyone goes, oh, because he's pretty and he's well spoken, and that's really refreshing compared to Trump, for instance. And it is, but it's still Trudeau's done awful shit around the environment, awful shit to First Nations people. And there's some really fucking nasty corruption scandals going on there as well. So very, very, very dangerous to get into personality cults around politicians. Because maybe I'm cynical, but I pretty much believe they'll always let you down. Because I just think that's the way things go, quite honestly. Yes, that's a small saving grace. Justin, at least Palmer isn't paying. At least Palmer's not even in Parliament because he sucks shit. Yeah, he's a liar and a scammer and a crook. But anyway, hey, look, it's 10 o'clock. Not got a big day tomorrow. I've got to do a special thing with an open day and talk to people. I have to talk to people tomorrow. Normally, working in an office as IT worker, my human interaction is limited, which is great. But tomorrow I have to talk to people. Oh, I've got to do promotional stuff. Oh. But at least I'll be in the city and I get to have, I'm going to go somewhere for breakfast. Nice. Then maybe somewhere nice for lunch too. We'll see how that goes. But yes, I can't really stay up late. I've got to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and shaking hands with the people tomorrow. Talking to the people. And thanks, Miss Notification, for reminding people to do the thumbs up. But yes, thank you one and all for joining. Having fun. I wasn't too harsh about anything because I know I can be. But, you know, I'm a fairly opinionated person. But yes, look after yourselves, one and all. Thanks for catching the live streaming. I was glad you had fun. Look after yourselves, one and all, as we churn through this thing called life. I didn't even get to review the other book I was reading or listening to, Dark Emu, which is fucking amazing. I might make a video about it because the short version of Dark Emu is everything we, as colonial Australians, have been told about how Indigenous Australians lived before we got here is a fucking lie. They had agriculture. They built things. In fact, Indigenous Australians may have created the oldest human-built structures in history. Yes, with these levees and stuff they used to control waterways and catch fish. It's amazing. It's all about the way Indigenous Australians actually farmed, actually had agriculture. They weren't, we get told that they're just nomadic hunters and gatherers that didn't build permanent structures and had no concept of agriculture. Fucking lies, as it turns out. That's amazing. I'll probably make a whole video about the book Dark Emu because it should be in every fucking school in Australia, telling people a bit more truth about this fine country of ours. Anyway, good night, one and all. Thank you for joining in. Hope to see you again soon. But I will say bye for now.